Hey there everybody, and welcome back to more Silent Hill 3. Last time, if you may recall, Heather's father had been murdered. Claudia had directed Heather to the town of Silent Hill, and we now find ourselves smack dab in a rather familiar area. If you had watched Silent Hill 2, or actually had played through it, this area, and the area that we're going to be heading to, the Brookhaven Hospital, was actually an area that James Sunderland visited on his journey here. And in classic Silent Hill fashion, the draw distance and visibility is, well, pretty shit. And we all remember the classic scenes from Jack's Inn where nothing happened. Oh, sneaky doublehead. But as per usual, the katana makes quick work of enemies and, well, just continues to be an all-around amazing weapon. But over to the right here, we actually do have a fairly important location from Silent Hill 2. Rosewater Park is where James first ran into Maria, and, well, there's no way for us to get in there. There's actually not a whole lot of places we can go to in Silent Hill, and we can just kind of have a little trip down memory lane. Lakeview Hotel. UFO abduction happened there, I guess. And the wonderfully overpopulated Texon station, where we found a book in a newspaper stand that's no longer here. Quite mysterious. And also, though I don't visit it, across the street was Pete's Bolo-Rama, where we ran into Eddie's fat ass gorging on pizza and a precocious youngster. But actually before, in Silent Hill 2, going straight down the street was blocked off, and we actually had to take a little detour inside of Heaven's Night. But instead, we're actually just going to take a little detour in here for ambiance, I suppose. No, actually there are a few items to get in here, such as these shotgun shells. And if you did have a Silent Hill 2 save, you'd actually find a flyer here near the stripper pole saying that Lady Maria will be performing on a particular night. And that is because this is actually where Maria started her little side story. And this brochure here is actually another callback to Silent Hill 2, because you actually find this particular brochure in the apartment complex for James. Or James finds it, I should say. It just kind of outlines the resort touristy portions of Silent Hill. It's kind of hard to tell that from what we see outside, but they did try to sell this as a wonderful, lovely, little, quaint, silent spot where all your memories will be found and magical stuff will happen, I guess. But yeah, just a few more items and we should now be fine to head on to the hospital. And I kind of want to get vengeance on this dog, but it's kind of circling in a figure eight to where it actually can't run in here, so let's go into the properly spelled Brookhaven Hospital. And we meet another recurring enemy in Silent Hills. This is the nurse. A lot more dangerous than we saw in Silent Hill 2. The nurses here are actually a bit harder to stun than they were before, and that allows you to become more open for attack. It can sometimes be very sneaky. But something I haven't shown off before, if you'll notice, is that I'm actually blocking. This is probably the first Silent Hill game where you can actively block attacks. And I'm wanting to say it cuts the damage down by about 70 to 80%. I don't think it totally nullifies damage. And it's actually a bit sketchy to use, but we'll hopefully be seeing me using it competently. And we already have the map for the hospital. The hospital is actually pretty much set up exactly as it was in Silent Hill 2, so if you remember the hospital from there, then you'll be familiar with the hospital here. But it's not the exact same. There are very obvious differences, as we'll be seeing throughout the course of this particular video and the next. And I was thinking that there was a file somewhere on the table or nearby, but I think I was just thinking of Silent Hill 2 still. Camera angles are fun, but let's go ahead and just get the hell out of here. And it's a little doll. Heather actually has some rather nice memories of being a child and playing with dolls, and it's all very sweet and innocent. Maybe this is actually a little child's diary next to it. Stanley Coleman and his wonderful collection of creepy dolls. Yeah, that's not a child's diary, that's a mental patient's diary. And for some reason, he happens to be waiting for and know about Heather. They never have actually met, and well, he's not anywhere nearby. And actually, if we re-entered that room, that doll and diary would have disappeared. But we'll be learning more about Stanley as we continue through, but it's time to keep chopping at these poor nurses. But yeah, as you can tell, only about every other hit will actually stun the nurse, so, you know, hooray for blocking, I suppose. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, there are still plenty of trap rooms waiting for us, but let's use some buckshot. Damn it. Alright, this isn't going well at all, but I'm sure there's a wonderful reward amongst all these twitching bodies. Stop stomping the one that's still dead. Whew, that was quite bad. And our reward is Jack and shit. So stay out of this room. There is no reason to ever go in that room. Thankfully, the other room available open on this floor, or this particular wing, actually does have something rather interesting waiting for us. Seems the patient in this room had a knack of gluing things to the wall. It's rather odd. But there is a particular item of interest glued to the wall, and that's a Danish. No, it's a key. There's a key, a key. Little Spanish pun in there. But the key being glued to the wall, well, we can't actually remove it, but there's also a little diary nearby here, so let's see some more of the very nice words of Stanley Coleman. And again, I do want to point out, if these are going by too fast, feel free to pause them at your own leisure. But in this one, it appears that Stanley thinks some organization has thrown him in here to keep the truth out or something like that. But he does mention that something about nasty wenches that keep on using a particular smelly item on themselves. And apparently that will somehow get rid of the glue on the wall. Also, the Stanley still loves us, and he probably wants to sniff our panties or something. But let's leave that for now, and we'll probably be coming back to that for later. And there is a very important memo on the refrigerator. And for our curiosity, we get a nice little health drink. And there's actually a little bit more information on some of the patients from this particular facility on the table here, such as some information on Leonard. Apparently Leonard has some mild schizophrenia, some strong sense of justice, and sometimes will have violent mood swings. Then we also get a little bit of a file on Stanley Coleman, who's apparently an egotistical puss, who has a very strong attachment to a particular woman. I wonder who that could be. But what those pieces of paper also tell us are the room numbers of those two particular gentlemen. So maybe we'll get to visit them. I'm sure Stanley is looking forward to a visitor. Otherwise, though, we are finished with this floor, and lo and behold, even though it doesn't seem like there's any power, the elevator magically works. First off is the basement. The basement is not available. So let's go ahead and head up to the second floor. And it looks like Stanley has plenty of free time, which means more time to write to Heather. And with Stanley's very helpful diary, he has told us that a doctor has posted a note nearby to tell us the door for the door code. And that means we're going to have to do a little bit of riddle solving for no particular reason. Now, I won't go into a full explanation. Suffice it to say, this gets a little bit harder on the hard mode, and I may or may not be showing that off in the thread, who knows. Needless to say, we are looking for a 4-digit code that has two numbers that are at least double each other, that are not in, two of the numbers are not in the right row, and none of the numbers are along the top row of the keypad. So that does at least limit it down a little bit to what we are looking for. But let's just go with 8, 6, 3, and 4. But before we continue investigating that particular wing, there are a few more doors we can investigate down this hallway. And they aren't all locked. Just a majority of them. And what we have here is one of the examples of a costume code that has actually been hidden somewhere in the game itself. And considering that this is the nurse's station, and Stanley was talking about the nurses using a smelly liquid on themselves a lot, I can only assume that might mean the perfume, but we also received nail polish remover, which we're actually going to be using on that glue, or that glued wall downstairs. But another item we got, the perfume, is actually, well, a rather bizarre item. Whenever we have it equipped, it will actually cause any nearby monsters to actively seek us out and try to attack us. Which is kind of a mixed bag unless you're actually actively seeking out combat. But it looks like some of the nurses have improved their armament, and as you can tell, or maybe find it a bit difficult to tell, I was kind of hoping for some stealth here, didn't really work out. But yeah, as you can tell, that one particular nurse that I just downed actually had a revolver. They actually now have the capability to shoot you from far away, and that can pose quite a large problem. And you may be wondering who Margaret is or who this guy is. I will tell you right now, we will never find out for sure. This guy is just a MacGuffin to help us solve a puzzle. But the start time is my key. It's actually going to be the first part of that puzzle. Second part will involve actually finding out what we need his key to. So the gentleman was found with his carotid artery slit, a knife in his hand, but the angle of the cut had a rather weird angle. So the staff kind of assumed foul play, but they didn't have him as a patient. He had somehow found his way onto the ground, and they just kind of left him there. So I'm assuming we're going to need to find his room, which is apparently nearby. Hopefully sort through his stuff. Ah. The hell is that? Oh. It's a rather noisy alarm clock. And with time being his key, and this being his bed and his stuff, we're going to go ahead and enter the time from the clock onto the suitcase, and that will actually be our code for popping this open. And actually, this is one of the easier hard mode puzzles, because all it takes is, well, you to be able to read military time. And our reward is a Polaroid camera. What are we going to use that for? Nothing sensical. Let's go with that. And in case you needed a little bit more of a hint, Stanley will actually tell you that the tattooed gentleman, he was nearby on the bed. And, come on, Stanley. That's kinda too much. But I almost want to assume that Stanley might have actually murdered the guy, but it's kinda hard to tell. Especially when you're dealing with crazy. Ah, Jesus, again? Well, I got a better feeling about this room, so... yeah, I got plenty of shotgun ammo, so let's give it a go. And you may have already seen it, but there actually is a little bit of reward waiting for us in this room. And it's one whole med kit. Totally worth the shotgun shells and the beating. But actually, the items that will appear in this room will actually change depending on how many item or healing items you actually have. It's a rather odd little thing that you may not even notice when you're playing through, but there are a couple circumstances like that where the available item drops are actually, well, dependent on what you have at the time. But with nowhere else to go, I think it's actually time we head back down to the nail polish room, or the glued wall room. Great, another revolver nurse. Thankfully, she's considerate. Or bugged out. Considerably bugged. And you may be wondering why I don't try out the third floor. Well, let's go ahead and see what happens. Nothing. Excitingly nothing. Yeah, that's why I'm going to go ahead and warp on down to the first floor, and I'm going to go ahead and skip to the glue room. And with our new stairwell key, we should actually gain access to pretty much the rest of the hospital. That includes the basement, the third floor, and the roof. And I'm sure there is a nurse nearby, but I think we've fought a metric shit ton of them, so let's not worry about that one. And before we head upstairs, might as well check out the basement. Not conspicuous at all. But we do get a clip of submachine gun bullets. And somewhere nearby, a helicopter lands apparently, but we get our final ranged weapon of the game, and boy, is it a doozy. Yeah, this thing, the submachine gun, is actually our replacement for what would normally be the hunting rifle in the game. And honestly, I think it's a fairly good replacement. The hunting rifle, with its large damage and slow firing, was always a bit cumbersome to use. But the submachine gun, as I'll probably be showing out against a boss later on, is very quick firing, low damage, but very high stunning. So it kind of, it's a good weapon. It just takes a little bit of practice to get used to. Just want to make sure the second floor door was unlocked. And before we head into the third floor, I want to go ahead and check out the roof, just because there is actually not that much to get up there. But there is a nice another diary from Stanley, some motivational words. Ah, Stanley, so poetic. But we get a few closers, and we're not even going to worry about them, because what we actually want up here are some rather hard to spot submachine gun clips, and we do want to get as many of those as possible. Also, it struck me that I forgot something very important in the basement, so we made a little jump cut here, because one of these doors, not the wheelchair, is actually open. And what's waiting for us in this little basement room but, well, a rather odd puzzle of sorts. Honestly, the solution of this would not be very evident, and it's kind of one of those situations where you just kind of have to use whatever items you have currently on you. And the only thing we actually currently have on us, that is the Polaroid camera. Seriously, how the hell were you supposed to logic that out? That makes no sense. But it does give us a 4-digit code, which we're going to be using on the third floor. First, though, I think it's time to get a little bit more macabre backstory on the Brookhaven mental institution here. Apparently, these tiny rooms were actually special treatment rooms where some of the more brutal patients were to be left. But there's additional little writing on this memo on the wall here, which kind of leads you to assume that maybe the orderlies here weren't so nice. And that maybe the orderlies weren't the only problem, as I guess Christie kind of ran into some issues with the director or the chief, and well, considering where we are, I'm assuming he might have stuck her in one of these special treatment rooms. Christie? Oh gosh, she's gone feral. And we have another rather exciting and intriguing entry into the Stanley Coleman Book of Crazy. Yeah, if you were wondering if Stanley had suddenly gotten some poetic nudgings, no, he actually just got another mental patient to help him with that. The one kind of interesting portion of that poem was the fact that it mentioned ebony hair. And as we've seen throughout the game, well, Heather is a prominent blonde, so why on earth would he be mentioning someone or picturing someone with black hair? Outside of the obvious reason that, he's a nut, so. But we have a nice little storage room here. It has a few items. One of them, the stun gun battery, is actually an item we will not be seeing that often. There are maybe 3 or 4 stun gun batteries in the entire game. And I do want to make a correction. In the last video I said each battery only has 1 charge. They actually have 4 apiece, so you'll actually be able to shock somebody about 4 times before you have to change batteries. But that means throughout the entire game you'll only have about 16 shots with the stun gun. But from that Polaroid picture, we're just going to enter the code off that, allowing us access to the 3rd floor wing. And the 3rd floor wing, if we look at the letters on the door, are actually going to be where we're going to be running into both Stanley and Leonard's room. But on the bed here is a Silent Hill gossip magazine. There is actually going to be quite a lot to this, but it's not really going to be that relevant to Silent Hill 3. If you can believe it, it's actually going to be brought up more in Silent Hill 4 The Room, and it's also going to be referring to a rather mysterious orphanage on the outskirts of Silent Hill where children may or may not be indoctrinated with a rather odd religious cult's beliefs. It's all very spooky, I'm sure, but it's really not brought up at all in this game after this point, so you can pretty much forget about it. But in case you had any wonderings whether or not there might be multiple cults in the city, no, there's just one, with the most unoriginal name known to man. And I do want to say it's rather telling of finding this magazine in a psychiatric ward, as it seems to be, well, incredibly like a very paranoid viewpoint of some outside controlling brainwashing operation. But it actually does have some air of truth to it. And we finally stumble across Stanley Coleman's room, minus Stanley. But we do have what is actually going to be the final diary from Stanley, the destroyed remnants of the doll nearby. Apparently, Leonard and Stanley had some kerfuffle, and it apparently led to the end of Stanley, even though how he is writing this, or how he managed to plan all these diaries and dolls and all these different locations is, kind of a mystery right now. Well, I'm sure we will make sure to be very careful of Leonard, but what we should actually be more wary of is the fact that once you leave Stanley's room, you actually get pincered attacked by a number of nurses. One of whom I think is actually carrying a revolver. Yep. Very dangerous fight here. Thankfully, we are still doing fairly well on healing items, especially as we get closer and closer to the end of the game. The healing items will start drying up more and more, and the battles will start getting a lot harder. But I think we're actually almost to Leonard's room.
Hello?
Claudia.
No, I'm not.
Don't lie to me, Claudia. You're always trying to run from your responsibilities. Have you come to apologize? Or maybe you still don't realize how foolish you've been. The salvation of all mankind. Ah, what a ridiculous dream.
Wait, just listen to me for a second.
I've heard enough from you already. How did you turn out this way? Where did I go wrong?
Listen to me already. I'm not Claudia.
You're not Claudia.
My name is Heather.
Heather.
Who are you?
Leonard Wolf. I'm sorry. I thought you were my daughter.
Claudia is your daughter?
Oh, so you know her, do you? Are you one of her followers?
No, never. When I find her,
I can feel the hatred.
What?
Behind your words. The anger. You plan to kill her, don't you?
I'm sorry, but She killed my father.
She's a fool. But she's still my daughter. I was going to forgive her if she changed her ways. But I see it's too late. Heather, will you help me?
Help you?
I'm locked up in here, and I must stop Claudia.
Where are you now?
I'm not sure myself, but the door is at the end of the hall on the second floor. I think I can be of help to you. I have a seal. Please.
A seal? The end of the hall on the second floor.
Intrigue and plot twist at every corner, that's right. Leonard is Claudia's father. As to what that has to do with anything, well, I think the first mystery is, what door was he even talking about? There's nothing at the end of the hallway, the second floor. Great, we're already being run around in circles. But I guess we have really nowhere else to go and no other leads, so let's magically warp down to the second floor and, well, let's take a look around. What the hell? This door wasn't here before, was it? It's definitely not on the map, and it doesn't have a number. What? You ever get the feeling you're running blindly into a trap? And we finally get to the trap. Well, something of a trap, I guess. Because we have no other place to go, and we just have, well, Seal of Metatron on the wall. Yeah, this may seem vaguely familiar. It may seem something close to the halo of the sun we normally see for the save point, but this is a bit different. Yet another callback to Silent Hill 1. That was the nurse Lisa, who watched over Alyssa as she was a crispy fried husk of a human being. And Heather magically is able to start drawing memories of that from someplace. She did get a little weird though, but with being dead. At least it was a good person. And I'm sure wherever Elisa is right now, after bleeding out of her eyes and other orifices, that she's doing probably pretty good. And welcome to the otherworld Brookhaven Hospital for Heather. Yeah, it's a little bit different from what James had to deal with. Well, very different, but we're going to get to that next time.